Hello internet, Tomomato here. RNG, am I right? Fucking bullshit it is. If you've seen my Talking to Myself series, who am I kidding, you haven't, nobody's fucking watching these. In any case, if by some miracle you're one of the 8 people who's actually watched the second episode, you'll know I'm one of the free-thinking, incredibly handsome philosophers who don't think too highly of RNG in video games, and I especially hate roguelites. Now, this style of game has more or less fallen out of favor now, but if you can remember in the long forgotten year of 2017, these things were sprouting up everywhere. Personally, I could never stand roguelites. If I lose, I want it to be because I made a mistake, not because RNGesus saw I was having too much fun and decided to put a stop to that. It's stressful. It's like sitting under an anvil dangling precariously by a single thread. You don't know when it's gonna fall or even if it's gonna fall, but when it does, that'll be the end of good times. Now, does this mean roguelike games are inherently bad? No! To further expand on this line of backpedaling, I'll be taking a gander at 2 games that I consider a good and bad example of roguelites, FTL and Strafe. Tomomato, you incredibly handsome man with a voice like strawberry cream cheese, I hear you chirp. Those 2 games are completely different experiences, targeting completely different audiences. Why, comparing them would be like comparing apples to oranges. Now, while that is true, I'm not looking at these games as a whole. I'm more so focusing on how well they implement RNG into their brand of gameplay. FTL, or Faster Than Light, or Fuck This Low Rent Inferior, is an RTS roguelite, but with its pause button, it might as well be turn-based, so I guess it's just an S roguelite. The game revolves around you commanding a ship, trying to outrun a fleet to deliver a message to your allies about the aforementioned fleet you're indeed trying to outrun. You have to manage various resources and gather excess resources to sell for upgrades on your ship. You gather resources by jumping from space to space and sometimes making a decision that could benefit or hinder you depending on how you handle it. Except that's a lie, the deceptive little prick. There's a good and bad outcome for every choice, so it's entirely up to the winds of fate whether it works out for you or not. Now, I'm not really a big fan of strategy games. They're weird and complicated and large numbers scare me. But, while I may not be the smartest light bulb in the shed, I still possess the skill of basic pattern recognition and can use that to distinguish between what does and doesn't work for any given genre. As we've established, FTL is a roguelite, but it's that other genre that makes it a roguelite, because a roguelite can't be a roguelite on its own, because with only roguelite elements, it wouldn't be a roguelite at all. It would be a roguelike, which, as we all know, is a term used to describe games that are like the 1980 classic game Rogue, which I only found out about while researching roguelites for this video. Who says I can't be educational? Anywho, I think there's a core conflict between its 2 genres of strategy and roguelite. Strategy is all about taking everything into account and coming up with the most effective solutions to each problem as they appear. That isn't to say strategy games shouldn't have RNG. After all, the best strategies need to be adaptable, and RNG can be the spice that keeps the game interesting longer. The issue is how much RNG is in the game. How the hell are you supposed to strategize when just about every step is random, to the point it feels more like gambling rather than playing? You can come up with the best strategy in the world and still eat shit because RNGesus decided to kick you when you were already down. God! The next game I want to take a look at is Strafe, an FPS roguelite that's really mint. Admittedly, I probably have a teeny tiny bit of a bias towards this game. It's definitely somewhere in my top 10 games of all time. Possibly in my top 5. I don't know, I'll have to make a list sometime. I could spend hours gushing about its tight and satisfying gunplay, and its varied enemies, and its fun and challenging mutators adding endless replayability, and its story told entirely through the environments, which is really something you don't see anymore, and its absolutely stellar soundtrack, and its nice retro 3D aesthetic that's old enough to be retro, but not sold that they look like cardboard skeletons with polio, cough cough cough. But none of that is important. What is important is how it implements the roguelite part of this FPS roguelite. Because without the road-like parts of this FPS okay, I'm not doing this again. It implements RNG by randomizing the layout of the levels, the placement of the guns and enemies, and what items will be sold in the store. Of course, it always has some set rules too. The store will always appear in Stage 2, each act will always start the same, and that battery puzzle all throughout Act 3 will always suck. But like I said, the RNG will always ensure every playthrough is at least a little bit different. And when things do start to get samey, you can just turn on some mutators and— No, that's not the important bit! I guess the point I'm fumbling to make is, I like the RNG in Strafe, but not FTL, because in Strafe, the RNG serves the gameplay, while in FTL, the RNG is the gameplay. In Strafe, it doesn't matter how unmerciful RNGesus decides to be, because you can still rely on quick thinking and skill to get you out of any sticky situations. While in FTL, if RNGesus refuses to smile, that shit's a game ender right there. So, in conclusion, Strafe is better than FTL? Oh, Tomato, you just don't get FTL because you prefer fast on skill-based shooters over slow, boring strategy. Well, of fucking course I do! I started this video calling RNG bullshit. Did you think you were getting an unbiased opinion? Bottom line is, RNG doesn't work as a core mechanic, and if you disagree, it's because you're stupid! I like my women like I like my chicken.